All right, so apparently we are going live here. We've got 11 people in the chat waiting, and this is just a little bit of a lead-in time for those of you who may be watching ads afterwards, and maybe some of you are watching ads as you jump in here, but nevertheless, I want to take the opportunity to thank you guys for joining the Car Guy and Six Fan Show. Wait a minute, you know what? I don't think it should be called the Car Guy and Six Fan Show tonight. I think we should be calling this the Car Guy and Narx Show tonight. Welcome. While Grant is on vacation, unfortunately, we've had to do a little housekeeping, and we're welcoming Mike to the show. Mike, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey guys, just want to say thanks and hello to everybody that's over in the chat. If you are watching this, make comments, ask questions all night. Please. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a blast.
Yeah, for sure. And on your way in, guys, make sure you hit that like button because, more people who hit that like button, YouTube sees that, and they'll send us out to other folks to come in and watch this awesome topic that we're going to be talking about tonight. Before we get into that, I do want to head over to the chat and recognize some of the people who have jumped in here. And, of course, Mike was the first one to chat there when this thing went up live earlier in the week. But we've also got Uncle Squirrel, Melissa Nunez, doing some moderating for us tonight. And we've got Stuff with Cletus, Mechanics, Dumbbroke Garage, who is a new subscriber, I think. He's been in my chat. Thanks for joining here as well. Will's Wheels, Roy Marko, and Robert's Garage, Turlo's Garage. And I think that's all we see in there tonight, guys. Again, share it out. Hit the thumbs up button. If you're not subscribed already to Narxoleptic Customs, I would encourage you to go do that now. The link is in the description box down below.
Yeah, thank you very much. Also, it's over in the side there from Melissa because she's awesome.
She is awesome. She's great. I'm happy to have her helping me mod tonight because usually Grant and I can do this together. One of the things I do want to touch on before we dive deep into the chat tonight, guys, is as you know, we were supposed to have a guest, Ken, from Whale and Wire tonight, and due to somebody close to him not doing very well, he had to cancel. He will be back hopefully in 2 weeks, and so we're going to play that by ear. So don't think we've lost him for good. He is coming back. I think it's time that we start talking about electric vehicles.
Well, I do want to say one thing that I am a little sad about him. I am a huge rat rod guy. Love them, have built them, all that kind of stuff. So I'm a little sad that he's not going to be here because I was excited to riff on some of that stuff. But talk about going completely the other direction.
Yeah, no kidding, right? So you and I talked before we went live a little bit about kind of the direction of where we wanted to go tonight. So I think where we should start is kind of the advent of electric vehicles in the beginning. We know that these things, electric vehicles were around back at the turn of the 20th century. People were messing with certain stuff like that, and they were trying to make things work. If you were stuck, say, in 1920, Model Ts were rolling off the assembly line, and all of a sudden you've got Joe Blow who thinks that he can make an electric car. What would you think of that guy back then?
Well, so in a little bit of the stuff that I found today, it's actually pretty wild. So electric cars were like kind of coach-built rigs, right? And then you had, and wealthy people always had cars. All the rich folks had all the cool stuff. Well, like everybody that had a car back then, it was either electric or gas, right? It was like this whole mix of everything. And then Henry Ford comes around, and the Model T or A or whatever was first was like $400, and an electric car was like $1,500. So, I mean, I'm cheap. If I'm instead of walking or riding a horse 10 miles into town, I can drive a car. I'm driving the gas powered one because that means I can spend more money on whatever else I'm into. I don't know what I would have been into back then. But.
Well, I think, I guess the point that I was trying to make with that question was, here we are pretty much 100 years later. And I think some of that mentality of people's way of thinking when it comes to electric vehicles is the same.
Yeah. Right?
It's more convenient to go get in my gas powered vehicle and go. It's cheaper to get into my gas powered vehicle and go. There's a bigger picture here though, right? And the bigger picture is efficiency and power,
Yeah.
as well as convenience. Do you think that there's convenience in electric vehicles today?
Well, yes. And when you were saying that, I was like, how is it more convenient to drive my car to the gas station and put gas in it compared to parking in my garage and plugging it in at the end of, like, every Wednesday and Saturday night? I'll plug my car in when I go in the house. Let's say that would be your typical process, right?
Yeah.
Like, how is having to go to the gas station and then, oh, I'm at the gas station, I might as well run in and spend an extra $8 and get me a Bang energy drink and a Little Debbie, you know? So I don't know about gas being more convenient for sure.
Well, and we're going to talk about this a lot over the course of the next half hour or so. But there's a cost involved as well today. And in the future there may not be with buying the electric vehicle. They're obviously more money to buy, but the big picture is the cost of ownership. Virtually no maintenance. You might have to do brake pads and tires, just like you do anything else. Maybe a suspension piece here or there, but there's no oil changes. There's the fact that you're going to charge your battery, or in essence fill your tank, for pennies on the dollar. So does it weigh out over, say, the life? Well, let's say 10 years. Right? Does the cost of buying an EV outweigh the cost of buying the cheaper gas and putting $50 or $60 in it every week?
Right. So my thought that it immediately went to was, okay, if I lived in a big city and I was going to simply be a city car, why wouldn't I have electric? The problem is, as we talked a little bit before we started this, was like, I also like to take trips. So I can't only have an electric vehicle, because then I'm nervous that I'm not going to be able to get to my place that I'm traveling that's more than 250 miles.
Yeah. So let's go back for a second to, we know that electric vehicles have been around for, 100 years, essentially. But more properly, they've started coming into play where every manufacturer kind of has their own brand, and they're starting to perfect that technology based on its predecessors before. You guys will all notice that in the thumbnail of this live stream tonight, I had a car up there. And I want to ask you guys in the chat if any of you know what the name of that car was when it first came out. So go ahead and put that in there. And I see Grant's in the chat, so Grant's not allowed to answer because I know he knows. But yeah, go ahead and answer that, what you think the name of that vehicle was in the chat. Of course, you can't go back and look at it now because it's gone. But
what's cool about that car is the manufacturer leased it to people and then wouldn't let them buy it, even though they loved it. So like they had to steal them. That's a great story.
Yeah, and Everything is Broken Garage was quick on the draw with the Eevee1, and also Luke from Coastal Auto Reaction jumped in there with the Chevy Ev1. Yeah, so it was basically a prototype. They didn't make very many of them, and I'm not sure what the number was, but I think it's as low as 500 maybe, where they leased them out. People fell in love with the idea. And at the end of those leases, GM took them back and virtually crushed them and destroyed each and every one of them. And for the most part, never pursued the electric vehicle for another 25 years. What's your thoughts on that? What like, if you're going to try and be the pioneer in electric vehicles and you make the product as a prototype and you take them away from the people who started to love them, like, what do you suppose is GM's way of thinking of A, taking them back, but B, not even pursuing that avenue any further?
I really didn't understand that, because there's a Netflix documentary about that car and how they killed the electric car or whatever. But like, why would you build a car and be that forward thinking, spend the probably hundreds of millions of dollars it would have cost to develop something, because it was on its own standalone platform. Why would you do all that and then say, no, we're not going to do this anymore? You know, oh, 500 is all we're ever going to make. I know there's people that like them, but, you know, and of course we're getting one-sided 25 years later. Hindsight's, you know, perfect. But, you know, were those cars prone to issues as far as like the brake wear and things like that? One thing I did read today, though, is that car and the people behind it is what ended up bringing Tesla to where it's at now. So.
Yeah, and I think that there's I don't think the technology ever disappeared,
Right.
and that paperwork, those blueprints, and those closed room brainstorming sessions. I don't think that information ever disappeared. But mechanics makes a very good point that even in the 80s, during the oil embargoes and gas crunches, that EVs were bad for business, because if you can produce a car that doesn't use gas, in one side of your mind would say, oh, well, that would be great. The problem with that, though, is the only place that you can get gas is at home, because there wasn't a Tesla charging station, or there wasn't an EV charging station on every corner.
Right. But what, like, is there some Illuminati that's in the background going, no, we need gasoline engines because that's the future? Like, even in the 90s, I mean, we knew like there was going to be issues with oil. That was from the 70s and the, you know, oil embargo and all the, oh man, oil's going away, no more gas, you know. Like, there's got to be somebody pulling a string somewhere that's like, we need to keep making money. You don't need to make electric vehicles. Like, that makes zero sense.
Yeah, and I think to some degree, I could probably agree with that. One of the things that I think people are concerned about today, as far as EVs, are okay, what's it costing, and what's the environmental impact to creating an EV, right? So you got a regular gas engine car. It creates the same carbon footprint as an electric vehicle does without the battery. So now let's input the battery, and we see what these lithium mines are doing to the earth. They're digging great big giant craters. Is that sustainable? So, are we really saving the earth by going to an electric vehicle?
No.
I mean,
so all the EPA and all of the crackdown they've done on all of the performance guys. There's been a bunch of videos out there about all of the carbon emissions, and that's why they're doing it. Like, look at cruise ships, look at all the other stuff. Like, we have a lot larger problems than people driving cars around to worry with that. So my philosophy is, let us have the car we want. If I want an electric car, let me have that.
Yeah, and I would agree with that too. It's supply and demand, right? If there's demand for something, you build it.
Yep.
The problem is with that is, for me, the demand is for every vehicle you buy to have 300 plus horsepower and tire shred, fun and all this stuff. Unfortunately, the EPA is not going to do that. And one thing I saw back here too is, again, the mechanics. He says oil and gas is cheap, very cheap. Automakers are fully invested, and they are. The problem with that is, yes, gas and oil might be cheap respectively. It's just not renewable.
Yeah.
Right. So eventually we're going to run out.
Yeah. Eventually the last dinosaur is not going to become oil anymore.
Exactly. So I think the idea there is, I think that's why more and more manufacturers, Ford, Chevrolet, Honda, Toyota, all these guys are heavily invested in creating and moving towards the electric vehicle, if not a plug-in hybrid, to kind of gain a sidestep to the market that they have now. Hyundai, Kia, they're all doing it. They're all jumping on that bandwagon. Okay, if we're not going to have fully electric, at the very least, we've got a hybrid, and the fully electric vehicle would be that next step. Then there's Fiat Chrysler, and we talked about this. So you got Ford with the Lightning and the Mach-E. You've got Tesla. You've got the Honda Insight. You've got the Toyota Prius and all their hybrids and everything that they've got there. And then there's Dodge with their 5.7 and their 6.4 Hemis, and like all you guys that are pissed off that people are LS swapping the world. Yeah, Chrysler is Hemi swapping everything. In fact, you can get a Jeep now with a 6.4. Yep. So like, come on, let's see what we can do to make more horsepower, like I said, in everything that we drive. And what does Chrysler do? Oh, we'll put this little electric torque box on the Hemi on the Dodge Ram trucks and see if that satisfies the EPA.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, so with the power availability of an electric motor, you could, so Chevrolet had a great idea by doing the hybrid Tahoe and Suburban, right? Except that they put a fire-breathing V8 in front of it.
Right.
Like, take the Camaro or the Acadia V6 that already makes 300 and put that coupled with an electric motor and drive a Suburban around that gets 25 miles a gallon, But instead they were trying to basically take the technology they already had and not have to build anything else and throw an electric motor in and hope they get 6 more miles a gallon.
Well, I think it's just a matter of time, though, before Chrysler does jump on the electric or hybrid bandwagon. Yep. They can't keep putting Hemis in everything. I'm going to get some hate here, but in my opinion, it's going to be just another POS electrical nightmare.
Yep. Well, I will say I did see the Pacifica van is now offered in a hybrid, which makes so much sense to me. One, you're not drag racing a minivan, and then two, why would you have plenty of storage for all the batteries? So why has, I think Toyota now has a hybrid Sienna van. Why wasn't that the rig that everybody focused on? Like, you're hauling kids in town all day, every day. Let that thing get 40 miles a gallon in town,
No. So I want to change direction a little bit, and that is Eevee Styling. Okay. Like, let's go back to the Eevee1 for a second. I am all about ugly cars, okay?
Obviously.
That thing was ugly.
Yeah.
So if you want to appeal to the masses, why don't you make a car look like everything else out there, but make it electric?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what, and Tesla made it sexy.
Absolutely.
They're harder to come by, like kind of exclusive, all that kind of stuff. And then you end up, people are foaming at the mouth for Teslas. So, value stays high. The problem, we'll talk about it in a minute, but the issue you made that comment about how it's hard to work on. You can't get parts, all that kind of stuff for the Tesla. But yeah, King Eric here is talking about the Honda Insight. The first gen, I was selling cars when that car came out, and people hated it. We sold like 4 in, I think, a 4-month period, and all these people would be like, "Oh my God, this will never take place. This will never be successful," and it wasn't.
Yeah, and 1979 folks growing up, would say don't buy Apple stock either, right? So the whole idea is that if you can't foresee into the future, then you really do have to look at everything with an open mind. Let's go back to the styling again. So we talked about the Eevee, the Honda Insight. The first gen was atrocious. Even the Toyota Prius. They made them just so different that the styling certainly wasn't the reason why you were buying it.
Yeah.
Unless you're a tree hugging, grass smoking, bell bottom wearing hippie that's lived in, for the last 30 years smoking pot. I mean, you didn't care what it looked like, because they drove Volkswagen buses and all that stuff. Anyway, yeah. I'm getting off tangent, but you know what I'm getting at is, if you want to make an electric vehicle, and you want to appeal to the masses, if you really want to change people's way of thinking, you got to make a stylish vehicle. Yeah. For starters. Yep. Because if it's not styled properly, a lot of people aren't going to buy it.
That's right. And so, thinking about that, you talk about Tesla. I wonder, is it because Tesla made such a splash with the Roadster. I mean, that when that car came out, like everybody before that had done an ugly commuter inner city car, but then Tesla comes out and they do it in the Lotus Elise, Roadster, $120,000 car in 2003 or 4. I mean, that was a big money car then, and everybody had to have it. Like it was a big deal.
Yeah, and that's part of it too. Like, what's the name of the supercar that Richard Hammond crashed in that series? Was it? Oh shoot. Anyways, the car I'm talking about.
Yep.
That was a sexy car.
Yeah.
Right. If you're, again, I can't say it enough. If you're a manufacturer and you're trying to change the world's way of thinking when it comes to renewable energy, Brimmick. Yeah, Wheels got it. If you're trying to change the world's mindset on electric vehicles, you want to make it look like everything else.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make it affordable. You want to make it economical, and you want to have the range so that I don't have to get that range anxiety that when I'm down to, 5 miles, it's not like you're just going to be able to, run to the store and grab a gallon of gas, right? You can't do that.
Yep.
In fact, I think I seen a meme on Facebook or TikTok or one of those things the other day that showed an electric car that ran out of gas, and the service vehicle was a diesel-powered truck with a generator on the back.
Yep.
That was going to plug into it for 5 minutes and give it enough juice to get down the road.
Yeah, and here's the thing: what did that cost?
Exactly.
Like what that service call cost? So that's why I feel for at least the next probably 10 or 15 years, hybrid technology is the king, because I could own a hybrid car, and if I ran out of gas, like that's my problem because I can get gas anywhere. But if you run out of electric, like how far are you from the station? I looked up, there's almost 50,000 charging stations installed in the U.S. and Canada. But how many of those are homes? How many of those are in office building parking lots that you're not actually, So when you really start looking at it, and like say it takes 30 minutes to recharge your car and you're on a trip, like you're stopping every couple 100 miles to recharge.
Yeah. We talked about this, but again, before we went live, King Eric says, what about making the Yugo electric? That would be cool. So you guys all have seen Trucker Dave or Main Trucka on Instagram. Him and I have been chatting back and forth quite a bit lately. And one of the things that he sent me a picture of was a wrecked Nissan Leaf. I believe it was from Copart or Craigslist or something like that. And he says, well, what about using this as your donor vehicle for the Yugo? I'm sad to say that I'm not 100% convinced that electric is the way I want to go right now. I just don't know enough about it. But B, it's a costly venture. Like even a wrecked Nissan Leaf, at Copart, it's probably going to run you $4,000 or $5,000, I would think. This one was actually in pretty good shape. You don't know what damage it's incurred. You don't know if that battery to replace it's going to be $7,000. But yeah, I think that would be an awesome opportunity. If I knew more about it, I'd certainly dive right in. I'm not saying I'm not against learning. I know where my comfort zone is. So right now, the Yugo is not going electric, but nevertheless, I think the idea behind that is, as the technology becomes more and more available and available to guys like us, mm-hmm. which is one thing. Again, we said, Tesla has that market. They're making quality product now, better quality product now. Mm-hmm. Their product is the ones that everyone's trying to catch up to, that they're trying to beat. The problem is that Tesla won't share any of their information with anybody. They own the dealerships, they own the mechanics. Nobody's sharing anything. So you even buy one that's wrecked, good luck trying to fix it yourself.
Yeah, 100%. Mechanic says I want to EV swap a Chevette. I'm a fan.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and GM did it like in the 70s or early 80s. There's an electric Chevette out there. It was as ugly as a regular Chevette.
Yeah, you can't make those things pretty.
No.
So let's kind of move a little bit forward now,
Okay.
and talk about the future of what you and I do, and what most of these guys in the chat do with hot rodding. Do you ever think there's going to be a hot rod group or a hot rod niche for electric vehicles?
I mean, modification for sure. I mean, I'm sure there's already Tesla car groups, and I think we're going to see, there was a guy, I mean, he's all over when you search, EV swap hot rod, that basically put all the EV stuff inside of a small block Chevrolet looking crate. It looks like a Chevrolet engine, a small block Chevrolet underneath it and all that kind of stuff. And then I think as you see more of that swap done, people that want to learn, I enjoy the learning process of building a car. So I think as it becomes available, I'm like, man, I would like to figure that out. I'd like to learn how that works. If anybody in here follows Tim Allen on YouTube, he's got a great channel. A lot of it's some of the comedian stuff, but then he also builds his cars on there, and he has a playlist that's like 3 years in the making of they're building a 32 hot rod sedan that's going to be one of the nicest ones out there, and it's all electric. It's a really neat build.
Yeah, and there's other channels. I don't know if you watch the boys from Salvage to Salvage. Those guys right now, they're doing an 83 rear body.
Yeah.
Custom frame, custom chassis. They're putting electric motors, all-wheel drive. This is, I know I asked you that question knowing the answer already, but I just wanted to have some engagement. But yes, I believe that, once more and more people lose that fear of unknowing and dive into that, I believe that electric motors are probably far less encumbering than the internal combustion engine. And all of its moving parts. Like, we sit there and we look at a motor and we say, oh yeah, well that's rods and bearings and connecting rods, pistons, and blah 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 blah. And you look at an electric motor, right? And what is it? It's a rotor and a stator.
Yeah.
Right. A few magnets, a few wires. Away you go. I think there's more to it than that, obviously, but the whole premise of it is learning it. Back in 2000, my dad was a transmission mechanic. Been a transmission mechanic his whole life, and about that time, transmissions were starting to go to electric. And at his age, he didn't want to relearn how to rebuild transmissions or how to diagnose them or how to fix them. So he got out of it, sold the business to his employees. And that's where I think we are as 40-somethings. We're looking at the future of cars and saying, okay, at this point in my life, do I really want to spend the next 30 years trying to learn an electric vehicle? Some will, some won't.
Yep.
Right. Yep. And I think the future of electric vehicles for guys like us is a close possibility, because I think we're at the precipice now of costs slowly starting to dive as more and more of these get out there. It's a classic, supply and demand. As the supply increases and the demand, the costs should go down. I don't know. What do you think about the whole hot rodding electric versus hot rodding gas? Could you see yourself moving in that direction?
Well, so in my mind, it's two completely different builds, right? So Harrison's Rod and Custom made a comment, says, cruise down the street in my 12.5 to 1 small block Nova and an electric car and see which one gets the looks. So that is my internal struggle. I love choppy small block cams, 3-inch Flowmaster, 2-chamber or 40 series, whatever they call them now, exhaust low, just sounds great, lump. Turbos on every project car we have, it has a turbo, right? You'll never get that with an electric car. You're going to get insane acceleration. You're going to get super quiet. So, to me, if I was, let's say I had the ability to build a 500-mile range, cool electric car, right? Who says you wouldn't put that in a 65 Lincoln? If it'll go 500 miles and cost me $0 to fill up at the gas station, and I just cruise and have immense torque, I'm in. But at the other side of my brain's like, yeah, but I want a big choppy, big block Ford in that thing, you know. But I don't know.
Well, seeing how Brian is kind of in on this conversation, I think I would ask him in the chat to say, Brian, do you think that there would ever be an industry such as what you're doing? Brian's into big, square bodies, I guess, is a big part of his business. But, rods and customs. Brian's my age. Do you think, Brian, that you would ever see yourself learning and moving into the electric industry should somebody come to you and ask you for it? I'm going to leave that out there and see what he has to say about that.
Yep. And I think, so here at my shop at Narxoleptic Customs, mine and my brother's shop, we basically do what customers want based on them finding us through what we've done in the past. Okay. Fair statement. We've done a lot of LS swaps. We get presented with a lot of LS swaps. But as we move forward, with the workload that we want to take on and things like that, like who says somebody wouldn't want to throw an electric motor setup in their car? The one car that comes to mind, the Grand Wagoneer we did the LS on, that would be a great rig to have an electric motor. And that he's going to drive that in town to some shows. He may take it on a little trip every now and then, but he's not going to go crazy. So who says that couldn't have had an electric motor in it?
Well, we look today at, drag racing. The boys are talking about drag racing in the chat. Short track racing or straight track racing is going to be something that EVs are going to dominate on.
Yep.
Okay, so what are we going to do to combat that 3-second race down a quarter-mile track in an electric vehicle? Do we make the racetrack longer? No, because then it's not safe. By the time they get down to a half mile, they're doing 200 mile an hour.
Yep.
Okay, so what do we do? Do we restrict them?
That's
by certain things? That's not fair. Exactly. So again, there's going to have to be changes and adaptations that no matter what we're doing, whether we're hot rodding them, whether we're racing them, whether we're just driving them daily as a hot rod. My idea of hot rodding is simply, like you said, the lumpy cams, the exhaust, the look, the sound. That's what a hot rod is.
Yeah.
Will you ever get that out of an electric vehicle? No, I don't think you will. But can you combine the two to find a happy medium? Yes, I believe you can.
Yep.
You can get the look you're going for, but you can also get the speed, the economy, the efficiency of an electric vehicle to do the same thing.
Yeah, for sure. And you say his name's Brian?
Brian from here, yeah.
Yeah, he said, I still defend carburetors and small block Chevy with tried and true tune versus LS crazy. Now, listen, don't make me come up there. All right. tell me I got to go electric, and I'm gonna fight it to the bitter end. And here's what's cool about being a car guy: we don't care. You know what I mean? Like, I want you to build what you want to build. You know what I mean? And I think none of the lumpy cam stuff will ever go away, especially as long as guys that are in our age and maybe just 5 or 6 years younger than us are alive. But think of my kids, they ride in my old truck, makes 500 wheel turbo LS. They ride in the Narx cart, it doesn't make any power, but it's goofy. There's very few of those kids compared to dads that daily drove a 76 Corvette. How many, you're old enough to know, buddies that rode in the back of the Corvette, the back glass sun deck there because
yep.
They had 2 kids and dad had to get them to baseball practice.
That's right.
Kids will never know that. Now everybody has that as a third car instead of dad's daily driver,
Well, nowadays we're wrapping our kids in bubble wrap just to, take them out in public. And, Brian, don't get me wrong. I'm with you. Okay. I completely understand it. I'm just trying to get some argument for conversation more than anything. But, I'll never sit there and try and convert anybody to anything. Hot rodding is what you make it.
Yeah.
Right. You're building that Narx cart for you
yeah.
and for nobody else. If they don't like it, who cares? Right. Same thing goes with the Yugo. I'm building the Yugo for me. You don't have to like it.
Now we know you're building the Yugo for YouTube content. Because everybody knows content cars on YouTube is where the money's at.
I haven't seen the money yet.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. But no, I did. It's you're exactly right. The whole premise on the Yugo was simply a grasping at straws YouTube strategy. And, I think the idea behind that is there's not many of them out there. There's not a lot of people doing much with them. There's not very many of those cars around. And I'm all about, I got a square body, probably one of the most famous trucks on the planet. But I've also got a Chrysler Cordoba.
Yeah.
You don't see many of those. You don't see yourself coming when you drive down the street or to any city.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with the Yugo. And I like that idea. And the whole, we're getting way off topic, but the whole idea with, going and looking at alternatives to make your everyday car, the one you do see coming down the road, different, could be an electric swap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And, early Honda Civics, lightweight, super cheap. When are we going to get like the easy swap for that thing?
Yeah. And I mean, I have no idea what an electric motor consists of cost-wise. I do know from watching these guys on Salvage to Salvage that they put one in the back, one in the front, and they're using all Tesla suspension on the front and back of this square body. So obviously, if they're using Tesla, that means somebody knows something,
right?
But they also know that those Teslas have been around for several years now and know their faults and their weaknesses, but also know their strengths.
Yeah.
It's just like anything. Brian says small block Chevy, carbureted small block Chevy. Okay. You know that because you know it.
Yep.
Right? You use it, you recommend it, you build it because you know it. No different than the guy who's building the 302 Ford or the guy that's building the Hemis or the guy that's building the LSs. You stick with what you know and you get better at it. Right? And that's kind of the whole premise of tonight's conversation with electric vehicles. We're going to get ready to wind it down. If you guys have any questions for Mike or myself about anything we've talked about tonight, go ahead and throw them in the chat. We'll do our best to answer them. We don't know everything. At least I don't. I mean, Mike might know, but we'll do our best to try and answer what we can. But all we were trying to do tonight was not convert anybody. That's not what car guys do. That's not what we're about. We're about looking at the reality and looking at the future. We know electric vehicles are going to be the future. Some of these manufacturers, some of the big manufacturers like Ford and GM are saying we want to be producing all electric vehicles in less than 15 years.
That makes no sense to me. Like,
right?
Where am I going to get my V8 swap if GM doesn't make trucks?
Well, again, like it's all about looking at, knowing what you know. Okay. I think I know enough about LS engines to know that they've been making them for the past 20 years. That you can find them from everything to a panel van to a pickup truck, and that they're making these things by the millions every year. So in 15 years, are the LS engines going to be gone?
Yes. Well, they won't be gone, but
they'll be gone from the manufacturer standpoint. Yeah, they might be gone, but will they be gone? Period. No, they're going to be junkyards. There's going to be pickups. There's going to be everything still full of these things.
Yep.
They will be the next small block Chevy, 302 Ford.
I was going to say they already are, really, because like you think, the last small block Chevrolet, I think was like what, 03, 02 Safari vans or what, whatever the box van was or whatever it was. I mean, that's 20 years ago. So, and that's the last small block Chevrolet. So like, as people, now it obviously took a long time for the LS to catch on because they had to produce them, they had to wreck them, they had to put a bunch of miles on, they had to be cheap and in the junkyard. And so like now you end up with, like the LT setup, which is like an upgrade, it's 100 horsepower more than the LS. Those swaps are becoming as cheap as an LS engine. I don't know what's next, but what I want is that suburban hybrid setup. I want the V8 for the choppy chop and power, and then I want that electric motor where the torque converter is to give me that extra boost, or let me cruise around town, and get good mileage.
Right. So there's a question that's been brought up. Why hasn't anyone made a 3-cylinder diesel electric motors on wheels? One of the things I think that if you guys know anything about what goes on in the UK, is the UK went on this huge bandwagon back in the 80s where they wanted everything to be diesel because they were more efficient as far as miles per gallon, this and that. The problem is today is that when you walk down the street in downtown London, you go home, blow your nose, you're blowing soot out your nose because every vehicle is diesel. And now they're actually trying to put a ban on the diesel engine if they're not clean. So I think the idea behind an efficient diesel electric, if it's clean, sure, I think there's an opportunity to do that. But I think that it's, we're getting to a point where we've already got the gas electric. Do we need a diesel electric? Is there a market for it? I don't know. Diesel's more expensive than gas.
Well, so here's one benefit. Here's one benefit to, as I would see this conversation, is the diesel engine that you would in turn be using as a generator. You can choke that thing down because you're going to run it at a set RPM anyway. So set a clean RPM of 1,200 RPMs, and that's what it needs to keep the battery charged to where you can still accelerate what you want to. What we're using diesel engines for right now is acceleration.
Right.
Where instead, like what he's talking about, you could put that just as a generator. It's just powering the it's literally a generator so you have electric power, would be the way I would almost build that car if I was a manufacturer. The problem is manufacturers have too much money.
Well, yeah, and I'm not exactly sure what the premise is behind that, and I'm certainly no engineer, nor even if I was one would I claim to be one. I don't think I get so much bad rep. We do have another question coming in from King Eric, the greatest of all, asking Jace or Mike, do you think that Pontiac or Oldsmobile will ever come back as EV models? No, I don't. I don't know about you. It'd be great to see those names back. Obviously, they've got so much history in the automotive world, but I don't think you'll ever see Pontiac or Oldsmobile come back.
It would be awesome if they would bring like the Trans Am back as an EV model. Something crazy, something performance oriented or something like that. I think would be the only way you'd see it, just like they did with the Hummer truck. It's officially a GMC Hummer.
Yep. We're getting ready to kind of slow things down a little bit, Mike, but I do see some other people. They're having some great conversations going back and forth. In fact, I think I saw Will's Wheel saying it's so hard for me to keep my fingers off the keyboard in this conversation. In some cases, you just simply can't type fast enough. Any closing thoughts on electric vehicles? Maybe something we didn't cover, Mike.
What I find interesting is that here's my thought. When will we get a manufacturer that will build just the skateboard, just the wheels, electric motors, and all that stuff, and then we have coach builders that do the top, like they did in the 1880s to 1910s?
Yeah, you know what? That's a really good point. Because today, if I want to go out and buy myself a Peterbilt, a Freightliner, Western Star, a Volvo, whatever semi-truck, I can mix and match and put whatever I want in that as my preference. If I want a Cummins engine, I'll get a Cummins.
Yep.
Right? If I want a Detroit, a Cat, I'll get it. Why? I get what you're saying. Like, why can't we say, okay, you want an electric platform? Here's the Tesla Model S platform that will sell for your brand new 2020 Chevy Impala.
Oh,
so Chevy goes and makes a body, plunks it down on the Tesla platform.
I was thinking more coach built stuff, more one off, not necessarily one off, but a manufacturer that does 10 of them. Because they do their own, Pina Farini body style, like they do. Like, when will we see? I think that's the next big jump. But how do you do that and it not be $350,000?
Yeah, I think the idea would be to find a way to streamline it so that there's too much there's too much cutthroat competition, especially in the big three that we see here in North America, to say, okay, why can't we come together and see what we can put our resources? I mean, well, here's a good example. Ford and GM come together to build a 10-speed transmission that apparently is crap. But anyways, they came together to build this 10-speed transmission. They're both using it on their pickup trucks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why can't more of that happen?
Yeah. And I think as the world gets smaller, you'll see that a lot more. BMW and Toyota joining up on all those cars. The Supra and the AE86 Toyotas, or Scion back in the day, whatever it was. I think you'll see a lot more of the gathering of pieces, but then everybody gets all butthurt and pissed because everybody's sharing technology. Oh, it's just a BMW wrapped in Toyota.
Well, guys, I think we're going to call it quits. We're going to kind of dial it down. We're going to pull the plug, so to speak, on this EV conversation. I was waiting all night to do that.
Yes.
We're gonna call it quits, and I think it was an awesome back and forth between you and I, as well as in the chat for people. I don't think anybody in the chat is totally 100%. Maybe Brian is from Harrison Hot Rod. Yeah. I don't think anybody else besides Brian is totally against the EV, but nevertheless, I think there's an opportunity there for people just to understand that this is, like it or not, this is the direction that car manufacturers are going in. Yep. And it's something that we're going to have to get on board with if we're going to continue to buy new cars.
Yeah. I'm ready to argue with anybody in the chat. I've enjoyed this a whole lot. I've enjoyed it a whole lot.
Yeah. So I guess at this point we're going to just kind of move into what's coming up on each other's channel. So Mike, why don't you tell everybody in the chat what's to come on Narxoleptic Customs?
So I put the roof back on the Narx cart last night, which means we're getting in our countdown for Rocky Mountain Race Week. Rocky Mountain Race Week is, for everybody that doesn't know, you're under a rock. It's like Hot Rod Drag Week, except I'm going to it. Like I do not go to Drag Week. Basically, we're going to start in Oklahoma City, Enos, Texas, Tulsa, Oklahoma, edge of Kansas, and then back to Oklahoma City. It's like 1,300 miles. You race every day at a different track. So we're getting the cart ready for that. And then I broke my Turbo LSC10 truck, and we have a drag race that's 3 weeks after we get back from Rocky Mountain Race Week. And I've got to swap in a rear axle and drive shaft and all that kind of stuff for it. So a lot of fun content coming.
Let's go back to Rocky Mountain Race Week. For those of you who don't understand exactly what it is, you've got one vehicle. You not only have to race it, you have to drive it from one to the next event. So there are a few rules around that. And, I think if you watch, anybody who watches Cletus McFarland's channel, obviously will know what it is. And it's a great event. I often regret the fact that I live so far from the center of North America, because that's where a lot of the great stuff happens. Right now, Hot Rod Power Tour is going on. It's probably a day and a half drive for me just to get there, let alone do the 5 days. I want to do that someday. I really do. And I think that if Grant and I can come together, meet somewhere in the middle, that's probably where it would be, is in Ohio-ish. I think we figured that out one time. He's on the chat right now saying it's almost 1 a.m. in Iceland. And we appreciate you taking your time, Grant, out of your vacation to join us as part of this, part of the chat. And I think we had a whole lot of fun there too. So,
Yep. So what's coming on yours, dude?
Well, you guys, I haven't been producing a whole lot of content lately. I've been toying around a lot with shorts to see how shorts do as far as views. They're great for getting views and traffic to your channel. Quick to produce, very little effort. Seem to be doing so far so good. But I do have some updates coming out on a video tomorrow. Today, I received an email that I've got my building permit for my new shop, so there'll be some shop content coming up. You guys asked for it, and I wasn't going to do much as far as filming it, but a lot of people have been asking for it, so we will get some of that as well. Yeah, so there's some cosmetic upgrades coming for the Yugo. Wheels and tires showed up this week. Some tune-up stuff I got from Rock Auto. So we'll be doing the timing belt, plugs, wires, cap rotor, just a bunch of little stuff so that we can actually get out and hopefully start daily. I don't want to say dailying. I don't think you can daily a Yugo effectively, but we're going to try. Anyways, the fact that I live right behind where I work now, there's no commuting, so I got to make an excuse to go for a drive now. So
I understand that. I worked from the house for like a year, and that year I put 2,000 miles on my car. I was like, okay, it's nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, so there is in tomorrow's video, there is a little bit of a challenge out there. I'm running into some issues with Dale the truck, so keep an eye on that. I'll be asking for your help in that video, and hopefully we can come to a consensus on where we need to go to get it fixed.
Yeah, that's an easy one. You need to LS swap it.
I walked right into that one, didn't I? Anyways, we're rolling up here on 51 minutes. Guys, thank you so much for being in the chat and being a part of this great conversation. I had a lot of fun with the whole Eevee discussion. Mike, it was a hoot. I think, even though you're kind of a fill-in guest tonight, I think you did very well, and I appreciate you, filling in for Grant and doing this. We'll definitely have to do it again. Well, I think we'll have to make it a point to have you back. Not as a host, but as a guest.
Yeah, hey, I'm in, all in. It'd be like a Duke Fest in there. Both of you guys coming at me. Oh my gosh.
So, any closing words for our folks that are watching us tonight?
Do burnouts, eat ice cream,
and never pass up the opportunity to use a bathroom.
That's right,
guys. Thanks for watching the Car Guy and Narx show tonight. Actually, it's the Car Guy and Six-Fan Show. Next week, it's again on my channel because Grant is still away. And Big Easy from Coastal Auto Reaction will be my co-host. We'll have a great topic of conversation. I don't know what that is yet. We'll figure it out. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week, guys. Stay focused on the windshield, not the rearview mirror. Let's do it again real soon.